Hi, Karl de Leeuw here. The moon hoax. Did you know that one of the main people supposedly responsible for getting man on the moon oversaw the killing of 20,000 Jews? Yes, it is true. His name was Wernher von Braun. I have footage of people being there confirming this. Hitler put him in charge of the V2 rocket program during the Second World War. Von Braun was also a Nazi and in the SS. Every day they hanged 5 people in front of the tunnel to show others what would happen if they did not slave hard in the V2 tunnels. It is true, check it out. I will return to Von Braun later. There is a disagreement between film and photography experts. Some say that what NASA provided is correct, and others don't. The Moon Hoax group proposes that all the moon shots were produced in a studio somewhere in the US. They believe they got to outer space, but not to the moon. Let's look at just 5 out of many reasons why some film and photography experts say that the moon landings did not take place. Item 1. The sea on one of the rocks of one of the Apollo missions. It could be a fluke, but the moon hoax experts say that there are many other items there too, as if some of the people working in the production studio making the moon fakes left hints for people to study in the future. It is as if they were not in agreement with what was going on and wanted to leave clues. Item 2. No shadow for the flag. There is only one light source, which is the sun. If you browse for photos of the Apollo missions, you will see a photo where the astronauts have shadows. But there is no shadow to the flag. How is this possible? Item 3. Close horizon. In many of the moon landing photos, you will notice that you can see the end of the horizon, unlike on Earth, where the horizon is far away unless you are, say, going up a hill. The supporters who claim that the moon landing did take place say you can see the horizon because the moon is about a quarter the size of the Earth. I don't buy that one because the moon is still big, but yet again there is something that is strange. If it was just one thing, I would say okay, but we are now on the 3rd item, so that looks fishy. Item 4. No sun and no stars in the background. Did you notice that on most of the Apollo photos and film, there is a dark background and no stars? You never see the sun or stars. The moon hoax supporters say that even though the moon has no atmosphere, the stars should be bright. This is countered by saying it is due to camera shutter speeds and exposure. The only problem is that Armstrong is recorded as not having seen stars, but later Apollo astronauts saw stars. They cannot both be right. We know from the Pink Floyd song, The Dark Side of the Moon, that we literally only see one side of the moon from Earth. And this is the side for the Apollo missions, because the dark side is too cold to land on. So on the assumption that the Apollo missions took place, they would have happened on the sunny side of the moon. And there are shadows, so we know the sun is there. But why do you never see the sun in the background? It is always a dark background, and mostly without stars. Item 5. Shadows being parallel and the same length. If items are not on the same level, then it is true that shadows do converge slightly, but not to the same extent as some of the moon landing photos, according to some of the film and photography experts. There is only one source of light, being the sun, and if two people or objects are on the same level and close to each other, then the shadows need to be parallel, or at least close to parallel, but not as wacky non-parallel as a lot of the Apollo footage. Also, the shadow lengths need to be the same length. I've only spent a day and a half researching the moon hoax compared to 7 years for some of my other documentaries. But please, for yourself, go to a browser and put in moon hoax and just see how many more items there are. If I had to guess, there must be at least 24 or more items that just don't stack up. These are just my views, but are backed up by the moon hoax experts. However, as discussed, the moon landing did take place. Supporters will no doubt see things differently. There are just too many cumulative clues that say something is wrong, in my view. But it's up to each person to make up their own mind. However, this can only be achieved by taking some time to research the topic. I don't like the word conspiracy when we are just querying things. Now let's look at 5 non-film and photo items that again raise queries. Item 1. The Van Allen belt is 2 protective layers around the Earth and has high levels of radiation that is a challenge to get through for astronauts. NASA, in a video whilst planning their Orion trip to Mars in 2016, said the following: "We must solve this challenge before we send people through this region in space." Surely this was solved back in the 1960s already. The Apollo astronauts lived long lives, so the radiation obviously did not affect them. Why is NASA so concerned now, in a time where we have much better protective materials one can use for spacecrafts? Item 2. 6 Apollo missions took place between 1969 to 1972. Why did they stop? The answer is that it cost too much. It is a bit like Henry Ford having just perfected his Ford Model T and spending, say, 90% of the cost in producing the first few cars and then stopping. Just does not make sense. There is a video of a young girl asking Neil Armstrong why we have not been back to the moon, and he is just silent. Item 3. Lunar probes. Did you know that over 70 probes have been sent mainly by NASA and the Soviet Union, but recently by many other agencies? Why would you send so many probes if you can do the real thing and land there, as the Apollo missions purport to have done? Item 4. Corruption. I've spent more than 30 years in the building industry, mainly in the UK, and have seen massive sophisticated fraud. Could it be that back in the 1960s it was even worse, and that a selected small group of NASA employees were taking many backhanders? John F. Kennedy announced in 1961 to the world that the US would go to the moon. There would have been huge pressure for NASA to make it work, as the US was in a race with the Soviet Union, and linked to it potential brown envelopes as well. Item 5. Returning to Wernher von Braun, who was responsible for killing 20,000 Jews. The US and the Soviet Union split the German rocket scientists between them after World War II, and that is why Wernher von Braun ended up being one of the chief people at NASA. This is bad karma on its own. However, do you think that the person who could watch 20,000 Jews being killed under his watch could be scrupulous enough to fake a moon landing? I do. Finally, we will know the truth. Both China and NASA want to go to the moon between 2025 and 2030, but this might take longer. When this takes place, we will finally know if the Apollo moon landings were real or fake. There is a very important issue. If the landings were fake, it is 100% critical that NASA own up to it now before they are caught out. The current NASA employees have no link to NASA back in the 1960s, and there is no shame for them to admit to this. Why is it important to come out with the truth before you are caught out? According to the spirit world, countries have karma, and we are on earth for life lessons via the reincarnation process. I do a documentary on reincarnation, but simply put, if NASA stroke the US don't own up before they have been found out, then this is bad karma, and the US Karma Group needs to come back for another reincarnation lesson, as they did not learn this lesson in this lifetime. So I urge NASA employees on behalf of the US to now reveal the truth. The truth will set us free. As before, I don't see it as a conspiracy, but I'm just asking questions due to a feeling that things don't stack up. Now for the conspiracy part, I know is only one possibility amongst many. Could John F. Kennedy have been assassinated because of the moon hoax? On the 20th of September 1963, John F. Kennedy at the UN General Assembly announced to the world that he proposed that the Soviet Union and the US join in the expedition to the moon during his peace talk. 2 months later, he was assassinated. Bonnie, Wernher von Braun's secretary, confirms in a video that von Braun had a meeting set up with John F. Kennedy for the day after he was buried. Here is the clip.
Are you Bonnie?
Bonnie.
This is Bonnie today. And this is Bonnie 20 years ago when she was von Braun's NASA secretary. Together we walk over to the library where she keeps her personal collection of von Braun memorabilia.
This is Mrs. von Braun, Dr. von Braun, and this is me. There's Dr. von Braun and President Johnson. Here's a good picture of President Kennedy and Dr. von Braun. Liked President Kennedy very much. He admired him. In fact, he had an invitation, he and Mrs. von Braun had an invitation to join them for dinner. The dinner was supposed to be the day after he was buried.